Hi, good afternoon, everybody. We are coming to the almost the end of Bamboos 2020. What an eventful 1.5 days it has been, with lots of interesting sessions, panel discussions, workshops. The expo going on with a lot of our partners showcasing products and solutions. So here we are almost to the fag end of Bamboos 2020. We are just about to start our final panel discussions on a very interesting topic of participation of citizens, especially if there's an opportunity for apartment communities in local governance. We have a very eminent panel who will present their views, panelists who have had a fair bit of experience and expertise in building the advocacy and practice towards citizen engagement towards local governance of Bengaluru. Before that, I would like to introduce Abhishek Kumar, co-founder MyGate. MyGate has been a very, very important partner to us in previous editions of Bamboos as well as current edition. One of the fastest growing technology companies, if I might say, meteoric rise. They are now in multiple cities and touching close to 15,000 apartment complexes. So I think it's fair to say that they know a thing or two about apartment complexes through these few years. So Abhishek, over to you to share a few of your experiences, and then we'll flow into the panel as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Vikram. Hello and good afternoon. I would like to first start by thanking BAF for giving me this opportunity to be here today. Past 2-day session, several of our team members have joined, and it's been extremely engaging and enriching. And first, congratulations to everybody in BAF for putting this event together, especially in this format, which is the first of its kind. What we see is several sessions brought out one very positive outcome of the pandemic, that is a proactive role of RWA-C Cooperating Housing Society, or whatever one may call, across India. RWAs have become a lot more active with the local governance system, and the collaboration between the management committee and the larger ecosystem has definitely increased. And there was a unified effort in keeping people in the society safe and ensuring that the goods and service delivery went on smoothly, especially if you recall in the peak of the lockdown period. Now, such valuable insights and some behavior change that happened shed some light on the amazing and often invisible work by RWAs that they do on a very daily basis to ensure the smooth running of the society. We saw this not just in Bangalore, but with our vantage point, as Vikram said, with 15,000 communities using MyGate. We saw RWAs across the country embracing their role with even more dedication in the pandemic period. And I personally know of many management committee members where they used to call every society member periodically to find if everything is going fine, and if there was any way society can help do anything for them. At the lockdown period, obviously, we did our role of technology, providing several COVID-related services, right from assigning quarantine flats or identifying people visiting from containment zone, with the sole objective of enabling management committee and RWAs to fight this unprecedented situation. And one thing we noticed that this management committee were keen to adopt new technology, but also were very innovative in keeping the community safe. And many of you have taken upon yourself to beyond the normal call of duties. So I salute you for volunteering to do this very often a thankless or considered to be a thankless initiative. I'll just draw your attention to something that we believe fundamentally changed during COVID, especially in the lockdown. And we are seeing that behavior change continues to be there even in the last few months, which has bigger implications to the entire ecosystem, right? From how management committee, residents, and the ecosystem around it of citizens, government, and other stakeholders coming together. Faced with the uncertainty of the lockdown and post-lockdown, restricted mobility, fewer people interaction, and greater focus on safety led to many behavior changes, and I'll describe them shortly here. What we first saw in general, traditional housing societies, which have been traditionally, I would say, not the early adopters of modern methods in daily functionings, and several societies take time to adopt cutting-edge technology. But not surprisingly, Bangalore societies are much ahead in this regard than we have seen in any other city across India. One key behavior change that we saw was digital maintenance payment shot up almost 3 to 5 times. Many management committees that normally struggle to get the residents to pay digitally, see this change, welcome change happening. And as we know that people are of all ages anyways are getting more and more comfortable making payments online. Second, residents who used to be scarcely interested in society activities are taking more and more interest in society engagement tasks and think about beyond their homes, because they are realizing in this pandemic that what happens around them has a direct or can have a direct impact to their well-being as well. One may argue that this behavior is unlikely to be carried forward in the post-COVID, but we think it's a watershed moment for all of us. It's a great opportunity for all of us to encourage these behavior changes so that they sustain over long term. And one final thing, and the strongest realization, and I think it's very important and has direct impact of how resident welfare societies operate, is what we saw communities in an unstructured way started to harness the collective power of community. I'll just emphasize on this phrase, collective power of community or CPC. And it started right in the lockdown period, where there were several instances where the entire community came together to purchase goods and services directly from farmers, suppliers, and other FMCG brands. In many societies, you'd have seen examples where residents themselves volunteer or management committee volunteer to collect residents' orders for daily essentials, vegetable, groceries, medicines, and bulk order with the supplier. And in a way, residents started to sort of this revelation of what it means to have the collective power of community started to come together. Now, on the other hand, recognizing that housing societies are hotspots of consumption and consumers, FMCG brands, big and small, and many other brands started multiple initiatives like stores on wheels to bring array of goods and services coming to doorstep. And that is what we call this phenomena of commerce will come to your doorstep. And it has interesting implications for all in the stakeholders. Even BAF made available for its members many benefits with the help of number of partnership, like with farmers, Hopcoms, and other suppliers of essential goods, pet foods, and COVID products. Many of you may say that these ad hoc systems were born out of the specific circumstances of the lockdown, but we believe it's a beginning of a game-changing way of doing business. Businesses are learning, and they must learn that during lockdown, what happened can lead to reimagining the supply chain and structure to deliver more value to the end user. Here's a quick example. A gate of a community or a lobby area, which is typically a flow. It is a flow of goods and human beings or vehicles going through them, begin to transform to an inventory buffer point. Last mile delivery cost for companies, 20% of that cost is from main gate to the flat or main gate to the villa. Several societies stopped delivery executives from entering the society and took the services of companies who came up to give specific services like collect to deliver, to take deliveries from gate to the flat. Now, if all of these executed well and designed to scale can offer interesting benefits to all the stakeholders, we believe that there is opportunity to enjoy competitive pricing, faster delivery, leading to a better living experience. And for RWA specifically, where funds always is a scarce and a hot topic or lack of funds, it presents a new and untapped opportunity for revenue generation. And we believe that truly the next leap on this is yet to happen. I want to just thank and quote Mr. Vikram Rai of one I have had the pleasure of knowing him for a few years now, right from the beginning of MyGate days. He said yesterday that MC management committees have the power to make decisions that can impact the lives of thousands within the society. Absolutely right. We saw that in the pandemic, and we see that there is a big role management committees, RWAs, cooperating house societies across India can be the link that brings together government, residents, civic agencies, business, and the entire stakeholder together. With a greater adoption of technology, resident behavior change, and engagement of products, brands, and channels, if we seize this opportunity and restructure the business model, it can mean a beginning of a sustainable and profitable source of growth for businesses and also additional revenue or funds for RWAs. We at MyGate are committed to build a platform for RWAs and management committees across India where you can exercise this CPC, collective power of community, not just intra-community, but inter-community as well, for both goods and services that an individual needs at their home, but also for goods and services that can be for that you have to manage and buy for community and common areas at large. Over the years, since the inception of MyGate in 2016, we have made significant progress, but it could not have been possible without all of your support and trust in us. I want to also take this opportunity to thank every member who is listening to me, every resident, every management committee across India, and the entire ecosystem of security guards, agencies, facility managers, and everybody who has trusted the MyGate brand to make their communities safe, secure, and convenient. We have a long way to go. We have exciting plans for future, and we want to work together with all of you as stakeholders to make community living even better. So with that, I'll pause and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Abhishek. I think you made a very important point on how the role of technology in enabling various stakeholders. I think as we segue into this next topic, which also is very critical about citizen participation, right? We are very excited about how our members, residents, members of apartment associations and RWS can play a very strong role in the civic engagement and local governance of the city. I think I'm a strong believer that technology will play a very strong role over there as well. And I do hope, I think between partners like you and with us and with all the very experienced panelists and partners who are on this discussion as well, there is a lot to do for us together as well. So thank you so much, Abhishek, and my best wishes and good luck to the MyGate team as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having here and best wishes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Satrupa, over to you.
Hello and welcome. I start this session, the very important session, as Vikram pointed out, on governance and citizen participation and how apartment associations can play a role in the same. As I start, before I start, a very sincere note of appreciation and congratulations to the Bangalore Apartments Federation for this extremely engaging event over the last 1.5 days. We've heard and we've seen a lot of really thought-provoking and useful discussions, and I think this is the perfect session to wrap this up. I'm happy to have a panel of very eminent speakers and experienced people with me today. I will start with a quick note of context setting, just to kind of understand what it is that we will be discussing today. So I think the proliferation of apartments in Bangalore to keep pace with the population explosion in the city, this is something which everybody knows. And trust me, I've lived in and interacted in cities beyond Bangalore. Even there, I have heard people talk about Bangalore and its apartments and the way they engage with civic life. We have seen that the relatively newer and the peripheral areas of the city are almost entirely dominated by high-rise apartment complexes. And one significant thing to note here is that many of these house thousands of units. And in that sense, as somebody had raised in an earlier session today, many of these apartments are, almost as significant and as critical in mass as small townships. There are towns in countries which probably have the same number of people. And yet within each of these, we have an increasingly connected and active group of residents who are aware, who are engaged, who are hands-on in dealing with issues on a day-to-day basis, issues of the community, of the apartment community, as well as their immediate neighborhood. In some areas, in particular areas like waste management, water conservation, sustainable energy use, or even say saving lakes and parks, we have seen apartment communities play an extensive and very visible role. And there are several instances in which they have created exemplary models and left a tangible impact on the entire ecosystem. So does this make them better informed or better poised to take part in larger issues of governance and administration? Are there enough mechanisms in place so that their energy and their willingness can be channeled and to get them to interact with and influence systems at a broader level? Also, very importantly, this year, speaking of governance and citizen participation, I think this year, 2020, has completely transformed the compulsions, the dynamics of engagement, and even the modus operandi of engagement. COVID is something we had never imagined we would have to live with, and it has completely made us behave and interact in different ways. It has also made us aware of areas that we had probably never looked at so closely before. So earlier, governance to us meant certain things, but now we are much more aware of the need for equitable access to basic needs of invisible stakeholders in the city, and how they can also be brought into the picture of public health delivery at various levels. So, how have Bangalore's apartment communities at large woken up to this new world? And what does it mean for citizen participation in governance? These are some of the angles that we are going to be looking at today. And as I mentioned, we have a panel of very experienced people. And while I'm sure they need no introduction in the Bengaluru civic ecosystem, I will just quickly run through a brief introduction for each of them. We have Srinivas Alavilli, who heads the civic participation team in Janagraha currently, and he is responsible for various programs and projects that strive to increase participation in local governance. But of course, Srini's experience goes far beyond that, and we know that he has been involved in various public campaigns and citizen participation initiatives since much before he joined Janagraha. We have Mr. Harish Kumar MP, who is the General Manager of Namma Bengaluru Foundation. His career spans over 3 decades in teaching, corporate and development sectors. In the development sector in particular, he has been very closely involved at all levels, right from the grassroots to policy making. At NBF, he oversees the foundation's operations, strategies, partnerships with government officials, ministers, RWAs, civic agencies, all with an overall mission of enabling good governance in the city. So welcome to all of you and to those who may be attending this session. And I'll just go straight to my questions for the panelists. I will have a quick round of, first round of questions, and then we will take the discussion forward from there. So, Srini, my first question is to you. We all know that you've been closely involved with civic participation initiatives, not only at Janagraha, but throughout your career. We know about your involvement in the corruption Saku movement, and you've had civil society mobilization. You've had tried to mobilize civil society for a very varied range of causes. Now, as we were talking, we are speaking of huge numbers when we talk of apartment communities or apartment the numbers that apartment associations represent. Have you seen engagement also growing in the same pace as the numbers in the city over the last few years? And what role can associations play in mobilizing a more critical mass? I think you'll have to unmute yourself, Shini.
So therefore, if I may interrupt, can you also please introduce ZB? Unmute yourself, please.
Sorry, I was coming to Zibi just before I would introduce her, but yes, we also have Zibi. I'm very sorry, Zibi, completely unintentional. We have Zibi, who is a core member of Whitefield Rising, which is a citizens movement for and by those who live and work in Whitefield. Zibi's work focuses on raising awareness of civic issues and supporting civil society government partnerships to solve the many challenges that residents of the area face on a day-to-day basis. Zibi also has many awards for her, professional competence and achievements as a public relations professional. But of course, today we speak to her primarily as a community volunteer and about her work for the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, Zibi, once again, apologies. I would have introduced you before I came to you. I missed that. But Srini, yes, going back to my question, I would like to have your views on how you have seen, the numbers engaging in civic issues grow over the past few years. If you think apartment associations per se have a role to play in that. Have we lost Srini? Um, yes, I think he's
Can
back.
you guys hear me now?
Yes,
Yes, yes.
yes, you're back. Do you
Okay.
want me to repeat the question?
No, I heard the question. I messaged saying that you could start with the other panelists since you couldn't hear me, but I'm just re-logged in. No,
Okay.
thank you for having me here. Thanks for the nice introduction, Satrupayan, and talking about this panel. I appreciate the efforts by the Bangalore Apartments Federation to organize such an event virtually. I'm glad to be part of it. I think many people say that the person that was speaking before this began also talked about how people in other cities, talk about the activeness or active citizenship of Bengaluru, civil society or apartments and so on and so forth. I think I often say half jokingly that that happens because we have more problems than any other cities. That's probably why there's more activism from the citizens, not because of other reasons. But the rate at which Bengaluru grew is just unimaginable, right? We just have someone once told me a statistic that blew my mind. They said that, do you know that between 2000 and 2011, some 11 years or 12 years a period of time, or maybe 15 years period of time, the entire population of an entire city of Chennai got added to that entire city of Bengaluru. And that's how Bengaluru became 1.2, 1.3 crore people that we have today. So when that happens, governance cannot handle it. It's obviously just an unimaginable thing. Imagine having a bus that can have 50 seats and now 300 people are sitting in it. Right? That's exactly how Bengaluru is right now. So as a result of it, there's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of gaps in governance. All kinds of decisions being made, combined with the nature of politics that we today have, where the competition, the intense competition for winning elections. Creates a situation where the political parties and the political leaders have to invest tens and hundreds of crores of rupees, and therefore their focus when they win elections is not how do I make this city better or how do I make this ward better, but how do I, get my return on my investment and then get ready for the next election. So obviously the priorities are going to be different, and the people that are coming together into the city and wanting to find a better life for themselves and the families, there's a huge gap. And there is this obsession we all have with owning a home and owning an apartment and all of that, which makes us invest in all kinds of things. When permissions were given, but there is no water supply, and permissions were given, but there is no STP provided. So people discover these things as they begin their journey into this wonderful city of Bengaluru, and sooner or later they find that many other people are in the same boat. I think any sort of association, as somebody that has seen a lot of people come together for different causes. I think people always work in self-interest, and that's not a bad thing. And people in a community, residential community like an apartment community, get together. They have a sort of a brotherhood or a feeling of fraternity where they think of the rest of the world as outside of them, and they need A, they need B, they need protection, they need safety, they need water, all of these things. So in the outside world, outside the gate of the apartment or the compound wall of the apartment, these things are very complicated. You have to deal with people that don't look like you, that don't talk like you, that probably don't understand the language you're speaking. But inside the apartment association, that's not the case. You will find that common language. You will find I don't mean the actual language of communication, but I mean the way we discuss problems and so on. This rational, logical kind of thinking, right? So this kind of thing creates what I call a certain governance model within the apartments, right? We have all these things where people will say, this Sunday I have an AGM, I have an MC, we have this. Today, the community where I live is celebrating its 24th annual general body meeting. So it's been around for a long time. So, these things have long process. They have chartered accountants doing their accounts. They have agencies doing their, whatever other services, allied services like security and so on. And they have, like Abhishek was talking earlier, during COVID time, people figured out how to bring the farmers market into the parking lot, into the clubhouse. And now suddenly you have the, vehicles coming in, and pretty much I think there'll soon be every service that's available in any city is inside the apartment premises. So basically what is happening is that a new form of governance has been established even before COVID, but during COVID, it got further solidified, and where we now have a well-entrenched governance model. Is it good or bad? I reserve my judgment. We'll come to that later. But what happens is that when people didn't learn civics after 8th standard, 9th standard, we all stop learning civics, right? And then we go out to do whatever we do and get into our jobs, and suddenly one day realize how bad things are, but we don't know what's going on. And every other day I see somebody tweeting Prime Minister when there is a footpath that's broken, thinking that somehow the Prime Minister is going to fix that footpath, but not realizing that there is another thing called the BBMP, and there's a councillor, and there's a ward and engineer, and so on and so forth. But in apartments, I think that is being rediscovered. I think they're discovering how the governance looks like, who is responsible for what, who are the people that we can influence, how can we use the collective power of votes, right, or public or numbers to influence the system. And the political class is also in a very good position right now, or a very interesting situation right now, where they have exhausted all options of aggregates. They've already created enough divisions in society in terms of religion, caste, region, language, everything that they can divide people on. And now they're looking for clusters of people they can attract to become their followers and supporters. So these large apartment complexes automatically become a good place for them to fight over and to win their support and so on. So it's a classic win-win situation. The residents of the apartments, especially in larger communities where there are 100, 200, 500 citizens, and where there is local political ecosystem that is looking for groups of aggregates of people. So both these things coming together at the same time increases the value of citizenship or the power of citizenship. So now the citizens have a very interesting way of demanding things from the system. Sometimes it can get really ugly. Recently, we saw in Hyderabad that some apartments have made demands to the political party candidates in the local election that if you build our elevator, we'll vote for you. If you create a swimming pool for us, we'll vote for you. So it's a extreme form of negotiation, and they are saying, anyway, they are eating money, why can't we demand? So coming back to the other question, so I think the governance model learned by several people managing these apartment associations is extremely important to citizenship in India. And I think it's going to have a very positive impact on our politics, because the more of Vikrams, the more of any number of apartment leaders that are part of organizations like BAF representing an apartment. I remember they did a massive campaign around STPs and the unfairness about demanding older apartments to suddenly install a sewage treatment plant, which was never in the requirement and the local body. So I think the power of aggregation and community and rights, understanding of the rights is coming together. It bodes well for local governance, it bodes well for politics, and gradually that also leads to overall quality of improvement in our citizenship and in our politics. So I'm very positive about it. There are many things that are bothersome. We can discuss that later without taking too much time here. I would, on balance, I would say it's a really good situation that we are in. I'm always a big fan of citizens that aggregate and that bring the collective voice forward. So this is one of those things that happen. And COVID has really exposed the power of decentralization. Just one last example before I stop my comments. During the lockdown, if you guys remember, there used to be these red, green, and yellow kind of markings for containment zones. Initially, central government used to say this district is red, that district is yellow, this district is green. Then the state governments complained that how can you in Delhi tell us what is red, what is green. Let us tell us. In fact, the Karnataka government has written a very strongly worded letter to the Union Home Minister saying that, can you please not declare our districts red, green or yellow? We know what we need to do. We will announce it from now on. A couple of other states did the same thing and central government stopped doing that nonsense. Then state government started doing that. Same thing happened with districts. Districts started telling the state government, can you please stop doing this? We know what is right. And long story short, BBMP started saying, don't tell us, we know which wards are. And it came down to the point that in a large multi-storied apartment, they would put the entire 15-floor apartment as a containment zone. Then it became 3 floors, 1 floor above, 1 floor below, where there was an infection. After that, it became that 1 floor and then that 1 home. So all of this, I think, is really without using the much maligned term decentralization, it made decentralization real for people. And that is a very positive thing. And that is going to help us, tackle the issues of urban governance much better, because now people have a very lived, natural understanding of the power of decentralization. So I'm very positive about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Srini. That was a very pertinent point, I think, that you made about the position of citizen groups as clusters who wield the power to make a change for the better, and how they, how COVID has put them in an even better situation, I would say, how COVID has underlined that situation very clearly. So on this note, I'm going to come to Zibi. Zibi, you have, Whitefield Rising has in many ways shown what a citizen-driven movement can achieve. But in view of the changes that COVID has brought about and some of the things that Srini just mentioned, do you see a change in the conditions, both internally and, in the system? Do you see a need in the change for conditions to make the same kind of impact that you have been making all along over the years? So how has COVID changed your situation as a group of citizens, and what has the experience been?
Thank you, Satarupa. And before I begin, thank you to BAF and the full team for giving an opportunity to join you all today to share our thoughts from Whitefield Rising and from myself. I think at the outset, I do want to mention that Whitefield Rising is not a RWA per se. We are a platform which RWAs as well as apartment communities or citizens can utilize to kind of come together, like Srinivas was mentioning together. It is a platform to connect and to organize and to collectively share our thoughts, for the good, as well as if there are issues to bring that to notice. So I want to make that distinction a little bit clear. But I also live in a community and an apartment community, so I might wear multiple hats during this conversation. With respect to pre and during COVID, we're still going through COVID, but the learnings, I think what it has during COVID and during the early days and later on, what really helped us was that it was easy to connect through people, to raise awareness, or to mobilize people to do something. It was having these connects, and through RWAs or apartment communities, it was really, really easy for information to get out. Actually, in Whitefield Rising, we have multiple WhatsApp groups for many things, issues and things like that. We have something very particularly called Communities Connect, where members of different communities are there, or there are nodal points or spokespeople or spokes for each of the community, and then we could easily tell them, and then the information could be relayed to a vast number of people living in Mahadevpura in Whitefield. I think for us during COVID, we started with information sharing. Actually, in Bangalore, Whitefield was a place where there was the first, COVID positive was in Whitefield, and immediately there was so much information going around. A lot of it false. Actually, I remember, getting information saying that Vaidevi has 50 people COVID positive, and one should not go to Vaidevi. I mean, it just was not there. As But we started with information and actually busting fake news. We became a platform to understand and share information from the government. I think that was one of the key things that we found out, how there is a lot of participation and governance issues that RWAs and bigger communities can do, and supporting each other to make things happen. So we started with sharing information. Very quickly, we all came to the lockdown and the relief drives that happened. We knew, we started with supporting the parents of some of the government schools that Whitefield Ready works in. But we knew that the numbers are large. We had to then partner with BBMP. We were able to connect with the JC here in Mahadevpura, and with all the governance structures that are there, that are here in Mahadevpura, to be able to identify and to help connect these communities with each other so that relief could reach them. Those were all very important learnings from COVID. But that said, I wouldn't make I wouldn't say that these were just strictly after COVID or during COVID that we learned. Whitefield Rising has been on ground for many years, 6 to 7 years, and we have realized the power of communities to come together to effect change. We have done many things with respect to increasing awareness about the toxic lakes of Bangalore. I think there was a lot of talk, but then with Vartur Lake and Belandur Lake, where we really raised awareness with respect to that. Or just with cleaning the footpaths, street lights. There were BESCOM poles, which used to be these poles that jut out, and which was just like at the head level for all of us, and often people used to kind of bang into them. Mobilizing to, or raising that awareness to BESCOM to say that perhaps that needs to be moved or removed. So it starts from small, very small, but if we can provide a platform, and apartment communities very lend themselves really well to these organizations, I think much can be achieved. So I wouldn't necessarily say that COVID made a difference, but I know that it made us the bonds stronger. And I do have to give kudos to the many communities and apartments and otherwise who came together to support the guest workers, whether by providing relief materials or food, or getting them transport organized. I know that at one point, there was a viral video of chapati rolling. I think it was in Maharashtra or Gujarat, I forget. But very quickly, we had this same thing going on here in Whitefield, where 18 communities, and we were making chapatis by the thousands. So homemade chapatis come and packed and rolled and being distributed on a daily basis. So there are learnings. I think for us, the biggest learning during COVID is that we are not isolated units. We are not isolated individuals. We are all connected in so many multiple ways. And those bonds for us have become stronger. I think every community really stepped up to help each other. And that's where I would like to, share.
Thanks, Zibby. I'll come back to you in a later round and some of the points that you have raised. But moving on to Mr. Harish. Mr. Harish, I would like to once again draw upon a point that Shrini also made, and I also had this question. So, I think the question of engaging with political members or representatives, elected representatives, is an extremely essential and critical ingredient for citizen collectives to make an impact to improve urban governance. But in many cases, and perhaps more so in apartment communities which are just getting formed, associations which are just getting formed, there we have seen an initial reservation and hesitation in getting involved in any kind of politics as we see it. So how do you engage apartment communities, or how do you convince apartment associations, and what would you tell them about the best ways to engage and interact with elected representatives at various levels to demand accountability?
Yeah, thank you, Satrupa, and my co-panelist, greetings to you, and thank you for having me here, and all the others in the room as well as for watching. Can you hear me? Am I audible clearly?
Yes, sir. You're clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Now let me begin by saying, before answering your question directly, let me begin by saying a couple of things. One, Bengaluru, as you would know, we have a local urban governance system and the body, right? The budget of this body is roughly about 10,000 crores every year. That's the budget. It may not spend so much every year, but it has that kind of a budget. And if you divide this budget or spending by the number of Bengalurians, we are contributing 10,000 rupees every year. Roughly, for the simple calculations, I'm giving you this figure, all right? So this 10,000 rupees is not a small money, right? It's big money, right? Now that gives us a right to engage. We have a right to say how this 10,000 rupees of each of us should be spent. Can we have a say? Of course, ethically we have a say, right? And then policy-wise, we have a say too. So where this right policy-wise come from? We begin with the Constitution where Part 9A, which was added into the Constitution in the year 1994, gives us the perfect right to engage. Okay, then that was reflected in the Karnataka Municipal Corporations Act, where Chapter 3A gives you the entire right and entitlements to engage. Now, our elected representatives have decided that Bengaluru needs a separate law, which is called, now they have passed it in a couple of, previous 2 days ago, they have passed it. It has lot many scope to improvise itself, which we can all come together and join hands, because Bengalurians are the primary stakeholders in this law, right? And therefore we need to get engaged in. Therefore BAF and all its members can play an active role in this. And we will come to that point. Now, coming back to your question. And therefore that gives us the moral and legislative right to engage, right, in this entire governance system. Of course, the term governance is too big, and therefore let's break it down to administration per se. Now, it's one thing to engage with politicians one-on-one, right? Now, if in the framework of governance, you need to engage with the system, not with an individual. Though he is an elected representative, he represents your interests in the governance system, right? He may not be able to keep in touch with all the 50,000 to 2,500 people in his ward. For example, the councillor or MLA, or for example, the councillor plays a direct role in our local body, and therefore he needs to get in touch. So he may not have that option. So therefore, what comes in is the platforms for us to engage with our political representatives, our own elected representatives, the other divisions of the bureaucracy, right, which are very important, right? Unless you balance these two in our engagement, we may not get the full result or the expected result. And so we need to engage both these sections of our governance together. So the platform we have rightfully is the ward committees and the area sabhas that already exists in Municipal Corporations Act, but it is getting a new kind of a form, which of course has some kind of scope for improvement, which we need to work on. this upcoming bill that has already come in, passed in, and it's going to become a law very shortly, right? So that is the right kind of platform, right? That's one. Going forward, we see that, for example, in the apartments, the COVID situation has brought so much of cohesiveness and experience. It's only natural that we take a step forward and outside the apartment complex, right? Because apartment complexes don't operate in isolation. It's influenced by its surroundings, right? People around it. Everything is influenced, plays a important role. The water supply comes from outside, the sewage system, the political system, everything is outside, perhaps this unit of apartment. Therefore, it's influenced by all these factors. And therefore, there is a need to engage with these factors constructively. Therefore, though the Constitution and the laws and everything gives you the right, I believe that it's good to engage constructively to start, right? And then we move forward to engage constructively, and therefore we need to learn. Of course, not saying that we are not aware of what's going on. Most of us are aware of it. Even then, I dare to suggest that whenever we want to engage with somebody, we would like to know them better before we start engaging in a meaningful way. And therefore, it's for us to understand BBMP, the structures and processes as it exists now, and therefore what might come out of it of this new act. So we need to understand a little bit so that we can constructively and rightfully engage, right? So that is one way of looking this forward. I would, we have just rolled out a small program called Know Rightfully and then engage locally, because the entire system of decentralization hinges on the fact that local problems should be solved locally, right? You need not have to go to the zonal committees or go to meet BBMP commissioner for every little things. So it has to be solved locally, right? So the structure is there. How do we improvise this structure? How do we engage with this structure? How do we know this structure better, right? So this is where we begin, right? So I stop at this point, and then probably we can keep going forward.
Sure, thank you. Since you raised the topic of ward committees, actually, I would have come to that in my second round, but since you've already raised that topic, I have seen, from our interactions, from whatever. So it often happens that, RWAs in particular, apartment associations in particular, get completely consumed by the issues of the community or their very immediate neighborhood or something that, that is directly impinging on the lives of the residents of the community. So to take up concerns at a broader ward level, what kind of, how do you think that can be encouraged more to engage in ward committees and take up issues at a broader, larger level, higher level?
Yeah. Well, the platform is there. Ward committees, though they're not working to the point that we expect them to under the law, right? But they are there. The structure is there. We need to make this structure work better. That is one. Secondly, the most important, the first work that the ward committees are supposed to do, at least as we see it in the policy, is that to come up with a ward plan, right? Where they have to interact and engage with the citizens there and put together these small plans and then put it all together for the ward plan. Now, we haven't seen or heard of these committees. Forget about the coming out with a plan. They don't even meet, right, and engage with people. So we haven't seen that happening. And therefore, it's important that while this new act is coming through, we need to look at this carefully and see that all these, now the saying as we all know, the devil is in the details, right? And therefore, we need to make sure that this doesn't happen. Now, in the constitution of the municipalities, the ninth A part, when it talks about ward committees, it says, now there is one particular thing. It says the manner in which the ward committees are, put together. Now, in all the other rest of the policies that have come through, there is composition and everything, that's fine. But where we lack is the manner, right? How do we put it together? Do you allow this to the total discretion of the councillors who will put all his, a team in the ward committee? So that is being challenged in the court as well. And therefore, we need to be very careful there too. So now this platform is available. So we need to start engaging with this platform. Now that the council is not there, councillors not there in place, the commissioner has put in the most senior most officer of that ward in charge of the ward committees, right? We hear that the ward committees regularly meet in the ward of the commissioner and not anywhere else. And the things are moving smoothly in the ward of the commissioner, but not anywhere else. So, and therefore, we need to make this happen. And therefore, there is a platform, there is space for all of us, BAF and members, and the apartment complexes that reside in that ward to engage in, right? Now, we need to figure out how we engage with it, right? And therefore, we need to understand the structures and processes that are in place, and then we need to fine tune our strategies, how constructively we can engage, right? Right. And I don't have a ready-made strategy, because every ward comes with its differences, complexities. Every ward is unique, and the set of people are unique, and therefore we need to engage in a unique way in that ward, evolve a unique strategy too, right? So that is how I think we can move forward.
Thank you. Moving to you again, Srini, there is one question that I had on my mind for some time. So you have been right now. You're also responsible for the delivery of the I Change My City platform, and I wanted to know if you feel that where apartment associations or citizen communities are concerned, do you think it is more what should I say? It is more common to find them engage in certain specific issues. You yourself mentioned, right, that ultimately it is self-interest that drives them, and it's perfectly okay. So, is it more common to find them getting involved in issues which impact their communities and their neighborhoods? But I'm sure it is. But having said that, what is the challenge in drawing their participation or leading them or engaging them in other issues, broader issues? And I think here the pandemic has played a very important role in terms of, like, we've seen much more dialogues about equitable access to facilities, about general public health care for all sections of society, etc. So is there a way, do you foresee that people will now be engaging in broader issues of governance and maybe move a little further from the immediate issues that were bothering them? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And on the ward committees, since as part of Citizens for Bengaluru, that we work very hard to take them off ground.
Yes.
I think it's something that we should acknowledge and realize that the ward committees are only as good as the citizens of the ward, not as good as the corporators or administrators or IS officers or anybody. At the moment that we recognize that, they will start functioning. And in fact, there are 50, 60, 70 ward committees that are functioning quite well, even today. Even after the council term has ended, the nodal committees are functioning and meeting and so on. And all of that is anchored on a very few individuals in the wards that are taken the responsibility of ward as their own. Just like members of apartment associations take responsibility to the apartment, we have many good Samaritans in our city, including many from Whitefield Rising and others, that take the responsibility of the ward on their shoulders. They think of the ward as their home or their apartment or their community. So we need more of that. When that happens, in fact, we as part of CFB, we have given corporator #1 awards to 56 corporators for holding ward committee meeting. A lot of people were upset with us, and how can you give awards to people that barely, didn't conduct many committee meetings in the year? They conducted only 6 out of 12 and so on. But as far as we are concerned, I think it's a great positive change from where things were before. For 27 years, ward committees were in the sections of the constitutions and the laws, but finally in 2018 December, they came to life thanks to Mayor Gangambike and Commissioner Manjunath Prasad, and also thanks to many volunteers across the city that came in. So it's an institution that took root in Bangalore now. It's really up to us, everyone listening to this, all the apartment folks, everybody. You think of your ward committee as holy or as important in democracy as the parliament or Vidhan Sabha or council hall. Your ward committee meeting is that important. If enough of us, a small number of us, get into that habit, there is no looking back. I think there's only going to look forward. To come back to your question, I think COVID has really sensitized people. We all live in bubbles. Satrupa, as we know, we live in our own, privileged little circles of life where we think we have problem when we cannot get the ice cream on a given day or something else going on. But COVID, the impact of COVID on a big city like Bengaluru, where we saw, and personally many of us, I know Zibi did, myself, we all went out on the streets, saw the people waiting in front of the police stations, waiting in front of the BMTC to get into a bus, to get into a train, and then going down the Bellary Road and distributing food packets to people that will say, "Ha, Bihar ko ja rahe hain, ha, UP ko ja rahe hain," like that. They were just walking, and two-wheeler, they bought two-wheelers to this entire, those few weeks of that thing, I think has a deep impact on the psyche of Bengaluru, especially those of us that are privileged and that didn't have to deal with the kind of crisis that all of our fellow brothers and sisters of India did during that period of time. That, I think, is a watershed moment in terms of understanding diversity of the city, what the city really is. Because a lot of people that live in the margins, we don't even give a second look. We see a few people at the traffic signals, the little kids playing outside the construction site, but the scale and the extent to which this section of society is very much part of the same city that we call home is exposed like never before during the pandemic lockdown days, early days of that. So as a result of it, and this chapati making that Zibi was talking about, and there was much more, right? I'm part of 200 WhatsApp groups from, Odisha to Kerala, where we were, people were tracking people walking on the highways and, giving them, I installed Google Pay, for God's sake. I hate those things. I never installed any such app like that. So people had to do all kinds of things to be, show that brotherhood and commitment. And I know many others that did. I think that is now going to come into how people approach governance. Earlier it was about what is in it for me, right? How can we are paying property tax? Why is there no water supply for us? Or why are there potholes here? And that is justified, that anger is fine and all that. But there's also other people that pay taxes. Every time they buy a 10 rupee chips packet, they're also paying GST. They're also taxpayers of India. They, like Harish said, everybody is, contributing to the GDP of Bengaluru or the budget, of the Bengaluru. But hardly any services are given to them. There is no infrastructure. There is no hospital to go. Why are all these people moving back with great difficulty into other districts of Karnataka or other parts of India? Because they don't consider Bengaluru home. Bengaluru doesn't treat them as their own. It doesn't think of them as citizens of Bengaluru, and the system is deeply flawed. The government officers are at loss. Where do we send this food? Who do we give these rations to? And all of us have been in conversations like this where we realize that the government knows very little about who lives in the city. They have a voter list which is deeply faulty to begin with. On top of it, they don't know anything about people that are out of the voter list, which is a lot of lakhs and lakhs of people that are outside. So governance, understanding of local governance and the significance of the services and rights to all sections of society is better understood as a result of it. I'm not saying everybody understood it. Whatever we're talking about, very few people are interested in these topics to begin with. I'm only talking about that community of people that are interested in larger things in life, about community participation, governance, role of citizens, and so on. This is a small layer of people that are interested in this. I think this set of people also were not aware to the possibilities or the problems of real urban India before COVID. And now I'm not saying they fully understand it. I myself have learned it over the years by participating in various campaigns. For example, when we did Bus Bhagya Beku campaign as part of Citizens of Bengaluru, I discovered that the entire part of slums in Bengaluru have been moved outside Bengaluru city. They've been built, given some housing, great. But they were given one bus. There's only one bus that goes there in the morning. So how are 3,000 people supposed to commute? So there is a private auto lobby, mafia, share auto, everything is going on there, but there's no bus. So, and then bus fare is so expensive. So only when you visit these places, interact with different sections of society, you will understand that. I think now the people are going to be more, the empathy has come in a lot more people than it was before. And now they have to be finding a way of connecting these dots. I've always been a big believer of it, whether I was campaigning against the elevated corridor or bus campaign or ward committees or anything else at all. We always try to string together a large section of organized groups in Bengaluru, because I believe in the power of the community and the power of a diverse community. You can't claim to represent just because you call yourself citizens for Bengaluru. You can't state that you represent citizens of Bengaluru. That's just a name. So if you really want to represent, you need to take those steps to actually represent and bring them in so that there is a wider platform, and there will be differences. No two groups, especially people that have opinions about governance, are never going to agree on these things. Jibi and I agree on a lot of things, but we may disagree on many other things. But the key is, what are the things that you agree on that you're willing to work together for? And that's what we try to do. And I think that's what these apartment federations need to do. I will give a very topical and somewhat relevant to what we are trying to do right now in Janagraha. Every year, Janagraha does, you mentioned I Change My City, collaborative platform called My City, My Budget. What is that? It is nothing but a participatory budget program. Kerala is very famous for people's plan. People make the plan in Kerala in urban bodies and rural bodies and so on. Bengaluru also does that. It's been going on for quite some time. Unfortunately, it has not been put in those words. So the idea is that people give inputs for what they want in the next year's budget, and BBMP includes that. I'm surprised to know that 90,000 such requests have come in, and some 20,000 of them have been accepted by BBMP and converted into this. What we're doing this year is, we try to focus or narrow it down to two things. One is about public urination, and second is about footpaths. Now, if you look at apartments, they are very much victims of lack of public toilets or lack of footpaths. Why are they victims of lack of public toilets? Because public urination happens everywhere. And I think there is a new law that I'm recently coining, and to amusement of my colleagues, I'm saying that the Newton's fifth law of Bengaluru is that wherever there is a long compound wall, there shall be public urination, right? There's going to be public urination everywhere in the city, and especially where there's a compound wall. And almost all apartment complexes have these long compound walls. So what I'm trying to get at is, let's fix the problem once for all, right? If you are in an apartment community and there is public urination happening around you, along your compound wall or just across the street or whatever, let's come together. BBMP is willing to, BBMP said funds is not a problem. We had a meeting with BBMP the other day. They repeated 10 times, funds is not a problem, funds is not a problem. We are ready to do this. But what is the problem? The problem is people coming together and wanting to do, do the right thing by the citizens. So if we report all these, what I'm again calling yellow spots as public urination spots, and we report all the broken footpaths, take it as a challenge. You fix every footpath that is near your area. I'm sure you're bored of walking inside your community. You go for a walk, morning walk or evening walk outside, right? Wouldn't you want your parents and the senior citizens and children to walk along the streets of Bengaluru? then do you want that footpaths? And I know many senior citizens, I went to Dignity Foundation last year, they're afraid. Children don't allow them to step out of the house. They said, you walk here inside the house or around the house, that's it, not allowed outside the gate. So this is really a shameful thing for us, and we have an opportunity to fix that this year. So I think this is an interesting thing that the apartment communities can take up this year, and it is guaranteed to be completed. And Janagraha is partnering with the BBMP along with all of you. There's already a lot of people on WhatsApp and so on. But there is a definitive certainness towards fixing these two things in the next budget year. The budget year being 2021 to 22, beginning April. So we're in the process of identifying the need for public toilets, identifying the public toilets that are bad, and identifying the footpaths where they don't exist and they're broken. Just these two things, if we can record them using technology or email or WhatsApp or in ward committee meetings and so on, and then get it into the actual project book of BBMP. It will get a job code. It will get into the system. Nobody can stop it. Whatever happens with the elections or not, those projects will go on. Budget will be allocated. So I think this is an opportunity for all of us, especially those of you in this particular audience. If you can take a moment or a half day to identify, scout the area around your apartment and report these things, we can get it fixed. So then you can feel happy. This year we got these two things done.
Thanks, Srini. I'm going to come in here with a slightly contentious or controversial take, and I'm going to invite both Zivi and you to weigh in on this. So as you yourself said, some of the larger issues that we talk of, whether it's like housing for migrant labor or access, public transport access to relocated slum communities, or even public toilets in all areas, as you yourself said, it is only a subset of the people, still a relatively small subset of the people who are interested in these issues. At the same time, within apartments, we see issues of, not letting the domestic helpers to use the same toilet or having separate. So obviously there is still a very strong class and caste, or whatever you call it, a very strong bias in society at large. And apartments at the end of the day are part of that society, right? So what is the challenge for associations to inspire society at large, as contained in an apartment, let us say, to get involved in issues where they are not practically, or, where they're not personally empathetic, or where they're personally not practicing those ideals? So, Sibi, what is the challenge that you see there? If you can come in, please. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, yes. I guess, those topics do come up. I mean, I'll wear my, my community hat here with respect to Whitefield Rising and others. We do get these inquiries often, and then as relevant, we do put it up on Facebook or share best practices and things like that with a larger community through, like I said, the information that passes through. But we're all citizens. We all have a voice, and there are boundaries that sometimes you need to draw with respect to what is individual opinion and individual rights and all of that. But when it comes to treating people well, when it comes to being neighborly, good neighbors, and all of that, if you have a voice, I think all of us should use that voice, and and try to educate or create awareness about those things. I know that personally in our community too, these topics have come up with respect to closing the gates or not closing the gates, letting people in, or any of those things. But as long as you are able to share and make your viewpoints clear and use the privilege, like, I very clearly understand that we are coming from a very privileged positions, and there are some issues we are able to talk about. Like when you say, there are only a subset of people are there who are able to raise these issues, because for a lot of others, they are very caught up in the day to day. They just do not have the time. I think sometimes they just don't have the necessary voice or the platform because they're kind of caught up in their daily grind. But for those who are privileged to have that space, who are privileged to have a platform, I think it is important for us to use that and speak for the others. And that doesn't mean that we always speak exclusively, but like Srini said, we need to be able to create that platform too, for them to share. So as much as possible, bring in as many diversified voices as possible, and to share that information and not let the negativity that can creep up, the arguments that can creep up, to not to to stop it from degrading into those conversations. But if you are able to present a coherent thought, there is a lot of a silent majority, people who do not want to argue too, but there are people. I do think it is important that if you have a voice, to use that voice, because it's only a very sometimes a small minority who will get into a conflict. But for the larger people who stay silent, they do want to hear these views. And sometimes just having somebody raise that gives them the confidence to be able to do the action that they want to take as well. So yes, there can be class as well as caste differences that creep in. There have been many issues, I think, that have popped up saying that people cannot walk here or they cannot access the clubhouse facility or any of those things. But if you're able to raise that voice and bring like-minded people together, organize, I think, and do better.
Thank you, Zibi. Is there anything you would like to add, Shrini?
I would like to say that in India, the holy book is called the Constitution. It applies outside apartments, inside apartments, outside malls, inside malls, outside clubs, inside clubs, everywhere. So if enough of us acknowledge that and do the necessary things that are needed to enforce that power of that book, that's all that is sufficient. I think there is enough people in the system that understand discrimination and the devastating impact of what discrimination does to people, and therefore they should not be silent spectators, but they should speak up and be the voice for the voiceless. We all have rights, but unfortunately some of us don't have the means to exercise our rights or assert our rights. So whenever you find yourself in that situation, you identify what is the best way of representing or protecting somebody else's rights. I think if there's enough people in these committees and the communities that take that seriously, we will have a more equal society and a more good, cordial atmosphere that doesn't discriminate against people.
Thank you. Fair enough. Since we are almost, nearing the end of our slot, I will just take up a couple of audience questions that have come in. And I think the first question, Mr. Harish, you will be in the best position to answer this. The question says, as said by one of the panelists, award committee is only as good as its members, but there seems to be no transparency in how the committee members are chosen. I think you yourself also raised this, Mr. Harish. So what, according to you, would be a good process to select the ward committee?
Before he answers that, I said the ward committee is only as good as the citizens of the ward, not members of the ward, but please go ahead.
Yeah, right. Point noted.
We need to, well, before coming to that, so ward is a huge area, right? We need to go down a little bit, which is already there, which is known as area sabhas. Okay, that structure is also available. We need to work at that structure as well, so that our immediate needs and immediate challenges can be solved there. Okay, so coming to how best we can get these people selected into this. we need to come out with a criteria. For example, right now it says RWA with minimum of 3 years experience, registered in the same ward. All these criteria are there. For example, if there are 10 RWAs apply for the job, how do you select 2 of them, right? And therefore there has to be a process. So there has to be a thorough background check, and for that checking system and affirmation, and that system has to be built in. So that is not coming through in the law, but we need to come this out with a set of rules clearly saying this is how it should be done. So that's in the paper, right? That will all be there in the paper, but how do we implement it on the ground? And therefore, a critical mass of people to engage the system at the ward level, at the area sub level is very necessary. Now, people may not be engaging with the system because of various reasons, including their previous reason with the reasons with the system. Having gone to a police station or to a doctor in the government hospital, they have their experience, and therefore they say, hey, we have seen all this, and therefore let's keep quiet and let's look after our own business. And therefore we need to probably take this system as it exists and tell them, look, this may not be what you have experienced. There are spaces and processes available to us to engage rightfully and productively, right? So that message has to go. That kind of maybe education or empowerment has to happen, right? So we need to well, there are good people right now. The number is may not be good enough to change the entire system. We need to build on this important heroes and heroines that already exist. We need more of them. Then how do we bring more of them? And therefore, we need to tell them and engage them positively, saying, "Look, this can be done. Come with us. Let's work together." Right? Not in isolation, but together. Right? So that's how we move forward. Right?
So, Trupa, I
Yes.
have one word answer for this, if I may, just one word. I think the way we should select ward committee members next time after the elections is using a lottery system. I think that is going to solve the problem. We need to use a lottery system. For the lack of time, I won't go into the details, but I'm planning to write about it soon. I should publish it. But I think we need a better system of choosing ward committee members. I totally agree with the question. And election is not the answer, in my personal opinion, for ward committees. Thanks.
Point taken. The next question, Srini, I would anyway address to you. This has also come to us from the audience. It asks, why can't we build a toilet at each bus stop? Can we? Or if not, why not?
There's no such rule that you cannot build it. You can build it. If there is the requirements for building a public toilets are very simple, right? You need access to sanitation, water supply, and sanitation. If you have both these things, public toilet can be built there. So nowadays you don't need that much space. Also, there's very modern designs of public toilets that are coming up. So yes, why not? In fact, the commissioner has already asked us and told us that every park and every playground will have a public toilet. So we could add bus stops to that. If I look around where bus stops are near my area, I just can't see some places where we can imagine a bus toilet next to a bus stop. But on major roads where there is wider footpaths and bus stops exist, it's a really great suggestion. I request the person who's asking to put it on the platform or reach out to me or put it on iChange My City. It's definitely something worth considering. We have a lot of good bus stops that have developed recently, and I must say that I've recently visited Bhubaneswar in Odisha, the capital city of Odisha, and the bus stops in Odisha are just fantastic. They're out of the world. They look fantastic, and many of them also have public toilets close by. So we should be able to do this. I think asking the question, can I identify a few bus stops? Let's start with that and then take it to the rest of the city.
Okay. So I think we are almost at the end of the slot, and I would just like to end this by inviting some, very brief closing comments from you on how to, because our topic initially was the role of apartment associations and citizen participation in improving governance. And as we've all agreed, like Bangalore surely has more of that probably than any other city in the country. But not all, obviously, I mean, not all engagement or not all campaigns and movements lead to the desired outcomes. We have seen very positive outcomes in the city, but there are also, fights which are being fought for years now. So how does, in this scenario, how does one, fight off or ward off a sense of tiredness or disenchantment? And how would you inspire citizens to, just fight on and stay with the cause? So if each of you could just come in for a brief 2 minutes on that, and we can end on that inspiring note. Zibi, I think I would like you to come in first, because you, as a citizen volunteer, as a community volunteer, you've been doing this for such a long time. And how does it feel? How do you keep that zeal going?
I think it's easy. In a way, I kind of think it. If you want change or if you want things to be better, I think one has to kind of make it happen. And it's very simple. Sometimes, like don't look at problems like as massive issues. Small steps. Begin from there. I know the problems and issues are dime a dozen, but see what motivates you, see where you can give your time and effort, and then do that. But yes, I do agree to your point of, there just seems to be one issue after the other, and there comes a time when we all sometimes get tired and to stop. But do it because you want to do it. Do it for yourself. You're not doing it for anybody else. You're not saving anybody. There is, nobody can save anybody else, but do it because you want to do it. And that is something that gives you personally satisfaction. And for me, I started doing it because it personally frustrated me to see that the road in front of me was just being dug up constantly. And it started, me being able to just getting the courage to going up to that person, say, why are you digging it up? And he says, no, there's a electricity line that needs to be repaired. And I said, okay, will you close the road and will you make it all right after you go? I said, yes, I will do it. And I said, okay, I will follow up. I said, who do I call? Just that act of saying that, he followed up and he closed the hole, and the road was back to normal. That gave me a huge, that was a massive learning experience for me, because initially I was really afraid, almost hesitant to do that. But I think that's where, for me, it's because I wanted, I would like a cleaner city. I would like good footpaths, street lights. So do it for yourself and then see where it goes.
Thank you. Shini?
Sure. It's I completely agree with Zibi. I think the way I keep going is by feeding on success stories. Little things that you feel happy about, things that happen, actually change, and then you feed off that and then go from. So find your little success story. It could be the small pothole that you get fixed, or the park that you keep open, whatever that might be. If you find that success story as a community, as an individual, that creates your own cycle of virtuousness, your own cycle of commitment and pride. And that's deeply personal and individual. And when there's groups of people with that kind of commitment and that kind of alignment, then things like Whitefield Rising, Citizens for Bengaluru, that sort of BAF, that sort of things happen when there is a small set of people that are kind of aligned and thinking for the greater good and wanting to put their time and energy and passion into that. It doesn't take much these days. Very easy to get things done. I've spoken about it a lot. It takes very little to bring change in urban settings. So it's just something that anyone can do. But Satrupa, if you allow me for 30 seconds, I have two things that I want to say to the topic of this conversation, which is how can apartment communities contribute to the governance. I think I would like to request the members of the BAF, all of the communities that are part of this, to consider bringing, I know you are already good citizens and make a lot of contributions to the city, but to further increase your ownership and pride in the city, I would like to see a lot more energy put into, kind of harnessing the solar energy of every single apartment community out there. You all have clubhouses or terraces or rooftops. Ask yourself if you are harnessing the solar energy that you can get, that can be used within your community to begin with. Later on, you can sell it to the grid and the rest of us outside your community, but at least can you start there? The second one is about water. Can you ensure that every single drop of rain that falls in your community stays there? It strengthens the groundwater, or it recharges your groundwater, or it is used for drinking and other purposes within your community. I think if there is a pledge and commitment from the thousands of apartment communities to do that, that itself will dramatically reduce the burden on governance in Bengaluru, and therefore makes Bengaluru better livable for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Srini. I come to you, Harish sir. If you can just share with us your thoughts on the question that I raised, and also, like Srini, if there are particular areas where you want to, inspire more work by associations, we would like to wrap up with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Quickly, like I began with 10,000 figure. If you break it down to wards, roughly it will be anywhere between 25 to 30 crores of investment in each ward, taking apart the major projects and administration's costs and all this. And we need to figure out and engage in this investment of 25 to 30 crores in each of these wards. I'm giving you a rough figure. That's one. Secondly, there are seeds already sown in the field. There are activists, active citizens. They are there already there, right? We need to nurture these centers of excellences, if I may say. We need to build more of these kinds of people, and therefore we need to reach out whoever is a little bit interested, and also those who are sitting on the edge, we need to push them to come into the arena and take part along with us. So only by experience we gather and move forward, right? So that kind of little bit of push from our end, from BAF and its members, that's necessary. We are always willing to be working with you. So like I was mentioning earlier, just started a small program of knowing rightfully and engage locally. So we'll be very happy to work with BAF at ward levels and area levels, wherever the apartment associations are. And we have just rolled out this program, and we're very happy to work with you guys, BAF and members. That's fun. Secondly, activism can be of two ways. One, privately, we can be, as individuals or a collective group of friends or family, we can go and clean up a lake and surroundings, clean up a street and all that. That's fine. That's a good thing, right? Also, you also need to see, wasn't there any fund allotted to cleaning of this lake? What happened to that? Right? So we need to look at both ways, right? Let's look at these two things together and see how we can move forward. So to that, what's important is to know your system better. And therefore, I request and therefore urge BAF members to see, let's work together, know the system better and move forward, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a very enlightening and engaging session. I think the potential of people participation or people power is beyond any kind of questioning right now. But within this short span of time, I'm very grateful to all of you for delving into some of the nuances. And thank you again. On that note, I hand it over to Vikram.
Thank you. Thank you, Satrupa. Thank you, Harish. Thank you, Zibi. Thank you, Srini, for a very engaging session, very thought-provoking. So I would like to appreciate and acknowledge the inputs given by you, and would look forward to a lot of coordinated collaboration. I think there is a lot of inputs which has come in terms of multiple agencies doing very interesting initiatives. We would like to believe that we can collaborate effectively and take it to our members so that incremental change happens at every ward level through multiples of our members, basically. So thank you so much. We will stay in touch, and you all have a good remaining part of Sunday. You have given us 1.5 hours of that. So I would wish you all a good remaining weekend and all the best. Thank you all.